Hi all, welcome back to the John Deere B tractor restoration. And in the last video I said I was going to fit the first gear reduction cover, which was this fella here. Didn't video it, it's pretty straightforward. Gasket on, tighten it up, there you are. All went well. Put the bearing in here, tapped it in, tightened up, and the first reduction gear is now drum tight. Doesn't move, it's absolutely worked out a treat, that new spacer. And so that was that. The reason I did that was because I wanted to, I don't know if this is going to come out, but we shall see. I wanted to fill the crankcase with some oil, so I could turn the flywheel over and eventually get oil circulating through the pump, through the filter and through the oil lines, which we did, and that worked a fat treat. Two problems appeared. That pipeline there, I hadn't tightened that nut up there, so we had a leak there. And on this side, under here, we have a slight interference with the skirt of the piston, just touching the one of the oil lines to the camshaft. Well, the oil line to the camshaft. So I need to just slightly bend that out of the way. I haven't noticed it before, but obviously when I was looking and checking all the oil lines and turning the engine over, I saw the problem. So it was a good job to do that. That worked out well. And so the next thing, obviously we've fitted the tappets there. And so the next thing I was going to do was just have a little bit of a show about timing and marks. Now if you recall, when we put the camshaft and crankshaft in, you can see those white dots, that is where the timing marks were to time the camshaft gear up with the crankshaft gear in there, that little one next to the mains bearing. And so we timed it up with those two marks. And when you fit the flywheel, which we've obviously have done, you will find that if you have it all lined up correctly, that the left-hand exhaust, which means the left-hand exhaust valve, if you have it timed up correctly, the mark on the gearbox cover here for the 5th and 6th gears will line up with that dot there on the flywheel. Now this actually has dots, some of them don't. Certainly the manual manual hand start tractors I have don't, but this one does. So whether someone has actually dotted them up in the past, if they have, it's actually quite a good idea, because it sort of helps with timing things up. Now if that is correct, if you've got everything correct with the camshaft timing, etc., if you come round to this push rod here, that push rod should just have some drag on it as you're turning it over, because that's your exhaust valve, which that writing on the flywheel refers to. And so it just has a bit of drag, and if that's got drag on it, it means that it is just to say starting to open. That exhaust valve is just to say starting to open. So you know that the valve timing is correct. To be fair, on a 2-cylinder engine, I failed to see how you could get it wrong, really. But I suppose you can. If you don't get that camshaft gear timed right with the crankshaft, then yeah, I can understand that, you know, or the camshaft fitted to the gear correctly, and yeah, you could get it wrong. I suppose you could get it wrong. And so that is basically what it is. If you've got the two timing marks correct in here, in there, on the crankshaft and camshaft, when you put your flywheel on, because obviously the flywheel fixes onto the crankshaft in a specific place, it should line up correctly there. That dot should line up roughly within, you know, half an inch of that pressing on the 5th and 6th gear colour. And therefore, if it's doing that, as it says, left hand exhaust open means that this left hand side exhaust is just starting to open. There's just drag on the push rod there. I'll get the torch, you can see that. There's just drag on that push rod, and that will suggest that everything's correct. Now I have actually set all the valve gaps, tappet gaps down here, and the way to do that is to turn the engine over until you're coming up to a compression stroke, and you start with the left hand cylinder. So stick your fingers in them 2 holes there, and when you feel a draft, you know that you're coming up to a compression stroke. See if I can do this. Yeah. And by rights, I'm reckoning this should come round to there. So that should come round to an impulse, to the impulse mark. So the impulse mark's there. So that refers to the magneto. And again, someone's put a nice dot there in line with the markings there. You've got to get down to it, because sometimes if you look down on an angle like that and you look into the line, it doesn't always, you think, oh, it's lined up, but it isn't. You've got to get down and in line with it. No, it's difficult when there's a wheel on, but that's what you need to do. Now I'm thinking that this should have it's come round to a compression stroke, and I know it has because I know how many revolutions we were off. And then you get your feeler gauge, and that's 20,000ths of an inch blade. Put it in there, and it should be just a nice drag. A nice drag on there. If we do it on that one, get the light out the way. If this is going to show up, but do it on that one. Again, a nice drag. Usually they are. One of the problems with old engines is that they do get a bit worn on the tappet end, and they get a bit of a ridge. I try and flatten the ridge off, but once you've got it flattened off, they shouldn't be far away. And basically you do the same on the other side. So the engine will be coming over now to its compression stroke on the other side, like that. I know it's coming there because obviously the crankshaft's in a different plane, and you will, as a telltale, be able to see that the impulse mark is now on the other side. Another thing is the 2 holes, better on a hand start tractor because there's actually, you can see the straight line that joins them up. They should be horizontal this way. And if you go round to the engine, you will see that the two tappets are loose, and therefore it was coming round to a compression stroke again. So yeah, so there we are. That's how you check your valve timing. And yeah, quite simple, really is quite simple how to do it. So there we are, that's that job. That means I can now put my valve cover on, because when I was turning it over to check the oil pressure, obviously I had oil coming up this pipe here and draining out into this area, To check, I left the valve cover off to check it was working correctly, which it was, but obviously I want to get the valve cover on now, because if I keep turning it over, oil will reappear again there and be dripping everywhere. So yep, so there we are. So that valve cover on next, and then the next video I'm going to do is slightly a different take on governor timing, so look out for that one. Okay then, thank you, bye.